Shalom from Jerusalem. This is Israel at War, an update on day 658 of the war, which started on October the 7th, 2023, with the horrific attack and massacre by Hamas, and is now still going on with 20 Israeli hostages who are alive and 30 who are dead, still in Hamas captivity. And of course, there are other arenas, other fronts where Israel is still fighting, whether to enforce a ceasefire or to eradicate terror cells, be they in Judea and Samaria, with the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah, the gangs and militias in Syria, and the list can go on and on. We have an especially distinguished panel here. Yes, this is what all the reality shows always say. We had excellent seasons, but this one tops it. But in our case, it is true. And with us here in the studio, Ambassador Bob Silverman, a distinguished retired Foreign Service officer from the United States, but here in Jerusalem with us. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you, Oren.
Brigadier General in the Reserves, Doron Gavish, an experienced air and missile defense officer, formerly the commanding general of the entire array, all of the units of these excellent warriors in the Israeli Air Force, now on reserve duty as the commanding officer of the Air and Missile Defense Task Force. General Gavish, welcome.
Tada.
And in central Israel, safely away from our Bobs here in the studio, Reserve Brigadier General Relik Shafir, a top fighter pilot, a senior Israeli Air Force officer whose exploits are too many to recount right now. Relik, General Shafir, welcome.
Thank you and good morning.
Now, General Gavish, you are quite well versed in what is happening in the operations rooms, in the war councils. Right now, while the IDF is still involved in fighting in Gaza, the main focus is on negotiations in Doha. They have broken yesterday with the various delegations recalled for consultations. Maybe this is a negative side, maybe it is only a pause before they resume. But let me ask you, when you senior officers in the military wait for your marching orders from the political echelon, how does such a development, such an event on the diplomatic side affect your planning, your work as military commanders and staff officers?
Well, I would say those are parallel efforts because the military have its own goals. And we all heard General Zamir, the chief of the armed forces here in Israel, saying that we are close to gain our goals, which is the new way of being postured in the Gaza Strip. So the way it works is that the military would sit down with the political part, with the cabinet, would get his own goals, and he's doing whatever he is expected to do. In parallel, of course, there are the negotiations, there are other decisions. We have to remember that things are in our arena, everything is tied to everything. So from this part, I would say that as a military officers, they are focused on their own goals to make sure that they're getting them. And once they get to their goals, which once again, we are very close to it, they would go back to the cabinet table and say, okay, we're here. What is the next step?
Ambassador Silverman, the same question from the American side.
Sure.
The State Department is the lead agency. The Secretary of State is the senior official number 5 on the succession list for the presidency.
That's right.
And of course, the Department of State is the oldest department to be established in the administration. Does it also have the lead in the military diplomatic work vis-a-vis Israel? Because General Gavish here is, of course, quite familiar with CENTCOM, the Central Command.
Right.
CENTCOM has a POLAD, right, a political advisor.
Right.
How does the chain of command work from Washington to the various diplomats? Here in Israel, we have Ambassador Huckabee, but we have Presidential Envoy Steve Witkoff, who has now been named as the peace missions envoy, not only for Israel or Ukraine. So how does it, what's the setup?
Thanks. It's a great question. The State Department does have a leading role in several specifically military affairs that affect Israel. For instance, base agreements. The State Department is the lead negotiator for American access to overseas bases. Pentagon people contribute to that negotiation, but it's led by a State Department. The State Department also has the lead in weapons sales. We saw that during the Biden period when there were concerns that there were slowdowns in provision of weapons systems to Israel. And those bureaucratic delays were all in the State Department because they have the lead role in approving.
It used to be the other way around with the Department of Defense delaying historically in the 70s, for instance.
Right. But that's the way the U.S. is set up now. In the region, there are all these ambassadors, as you mentioned, and of course we all interact, if you're at a U.S. mission, with the regional military command, in this case, CENTCOM. CENTCOM, of course, is based in Tampa, Florida. It's a nice place to go visit, and all those of us in the region used to all go back to Tampa to talk to the military command, but it has a forward military base, the headquarters of which are in Qatar. So you work both the people in the field and the people back home, but the division of responsibilities depends on the issue.
General Shafir, a question about air power. Paradoxically, the farther away from Israel the enemy is and the targets are, it seems that the Air Force is more effective. Iran, for instance, perhaps even the Houthis, even though the goals have not been met from the diplomatic side, there is still this quarantine in effect over the port of Eilat. But if you want to strike the port of Hodeidah, the Air Force does it. But right in our backyard or front yard, depending on your outlook, in Gaza, the war goes on for almost 2 years now. The ground troops are fighting there with the help of the Air Force, but we haven't won yet. How do you explain this paradox?
It's not a paradox at all. Remember that the exchange ratios between Israeli soldier fatalities and Hamas fatalities are around 50-1. Now that ratio would not have been achieved had it not been that each unit on the ground has Air Force support, either through fighter power, helicopters, or UAVs. Every new venue that they go into, if the ground forces think there's danger in a certain building or IUDs placed along the way, they are bombed by the Air Force, and thus the very high exchange ratio that I just mentioned. Unfortunately, through the Hamas way of fighting, there's also collateral damage, which is caused either by the Air Force or the artillery or tanks. But as far as ground fighting is concerned, the effect of the Air Force, what you're seeing is that this exchange ratio, same thing goes for the war in the north against Hezbollah, which was primarily by the Mossad and the Air Force. And the ground forces were quite secondary in that war. So it really depends on what you count and how you look at the events unfolding. Obviously, when we go to places where there are pure military targets, or targets such as the nuclear facilities that you would also consider to be military, where the Air Force does not really care about collateral damage because there are no civilians in the area, it's a lot more effective. So I would, when counting challenges and success, this has to be taken into account, and not just the fact that because of all kinds of limitations, the ground forces in Gaza have not overtaken Gaza by storm. That would have caused collateral damage that Israel would not withstand either ethically or diplomatically.
John Gavish, when you started out in the Israeli Air Force at the very early stages of your career, the air defense units were not yet missile units, except for very short-range ones. You were a tactical air defense force. And even in the 1991 war, 10 years after General Shafir and 7 of his buddies flew to Baghdad to destroy their reactor, when Saddam Hussein, in a way, retaliated by firing Abbas and Hussein missiles, which are variants of Scud missiles, Israel did not have missile defenses. The US and others deployed Patriot missiles, and after that, Arrow and other systems were developed. And part of what transpired after the 1991 war, in addition to the improvements in air and missile defense, was setting up the Home Front Command. And obviously, a big part of your mission now is strategic air and missile defense, protecting the population centers. Of course, also Air Force bases and other strategic targets. But basically, you are in charge, along with the Home Front Command, of this very important mission. How does it work out between your forces, the air and missile defense forces, and the Home Front Command?
Well, I would say it's a little bit wider than this. I mean, and we've talked about it more than one, Amir, but I think it's worthwhile to remind everyone that when we are fighting against rockets and missiles, basically we have the 4 main pillars. And the first one is the attack operation that is being done by the, let's call it the fixed wings, this part of the Air Force.
F-35, F-15, and so on.
Exactly, which are striking our enemies. This is exactly what is being done in the Hezbollah. This is what was done also in Iran. And by that, you're minimizing the number of missiles that would be shot toward Israel. Then there is the alert part of it, and this is really something that both air defense and the Home Front Command would be taking part of it. And this is an array of radars that is being dispersed all over the Mediterranean, I would say, looking toward those missiles that are coming toward Israel. And it would be, and what is expected for us is to alert the population. And then come what we call the active defense and the passive defense. And this is the pure defense phase of it, when the active defense, we try actively, kinetically intercepting those targets, and then the Home Front Command would be the one that would be issuing the alerts for the population to go to the shelters. Both forces are literally sitting together, shoulder to shoulder, and
in an Air Force base?
In one of our Air Force
built by the Americans?
Bases, without saying where. And this is exactly what we're doing. The Air Force is the one who is in charge on all the radars, the alerts, and or the detection, and the Home Front Command, the alerts to the population.
Now, Ambassador Silverman, back in the 70s and early 80s,
Yeah.
Israel waged a diplomatic campaign in Washington to avert or at least limit military sales to quote unquote moderate Arab countries.
Right. The
Such
famous
as,
AWACS deal.
right, for Saudi Arabia, but also other countries, Jordan, Egypt, even after peace. Now it seems
Right.
that the entire Middle East, or at least the moderate part of it, is arranged in another setup led by CENTCOM, especially in air defense, but there are also other sorts of cooperation
Right.
and collaboration.
Right.
What is the outlook from Washington regarding the Middle East? Of course, that part which is against the axis of evil on the jihadi, Shiite, and sometimes Sunni side.
Well, I would say, first of all, there's some good news here that thanks to the great work of the Israeli Air Force, the air defense, and the ground forces, there's some new opportunities now to reshape the map of the Middle East. Really, the first time you can see this major reformation, maybe since the Six-Day War. It's been a while. And so the focus now is on diplomatic strategies to make these permanent. You know, the military victories can be temporary, can be transient. They, you know, you enjoy a victory, but then people go back to their normal lives and continue what they had been doing, including in places like Iran, Beirut. You need the diplomats to step in and help shape outcomes that are more permanent. We saw this after the first
Diplomats
Gulf
or politicians?
or real estate developers, right? Sometimes all of the above. And yeah. So, I mean, I think the focus is on that right now. Israel has afforded the U.S. and the free world, really, the opportunity to help reshape this. We need Israel's help. The Gaza war is still ongoing, as you've been mentioning. Israel needs a strategy beyond the military side to shape Gaza. Only Israel can, you know, holds the ground and can do that. But in the region as a whole, I think the U.S. should and is starting to take the lead. The model really is what James Baker did after the first Gulf War. You were talking about the first Gulf War, but he didn't waste any time. After the U.S. Ejected Saddam Hussein's forces from Kuwait, James Baker was in regional capitals in Riyadh, doing things like disbanding the Arab League boycott of Israel, setting the stage for what became the Oslo Accords.
The Madrid Conference.
Madrid Conference, which was a precursor. So all that happened literally the weekend that the Gulf War I ended. And so we're hoping that we can see similar results.
General Shafir, you're obviously an Air Force aficionado. I wouldn't expect you to be against investment in air power. But if you try to look at it as objectively as possible, now that Israel is starting the process of disengaging and recuperating in order to build and update the Israeli Defense Forces for a new age, for a new setup of enemies, where would you put your last billion shekels if you had to choose between the Air Force and within the Air Force, the manned aircraft, the UAVs, the air and missile units, or the ground units, or the Navy, or perhaps intelligence? What would your priorities be?
I think we need a rapid force, attack helicopter force that is able to move to any weak point within a short time. This is something that we missed or didn't have on October 7th. And this will continue to be a problem as the lines of defense maybe as long as the Jordan River and the Jordan Valley down to Eilat. And with the fact that there are fewer combat forces on the ground, and certainly their mobility is very limited, I would say that this is something that emerged as a very needy uh, uh, challenge. So they don't all have to be Apaches. It could be a lighter mode type of attack helicopter, or even a combination of attack and utility helicopter that can be rapidly engaged from forward bases. That would be one of the things that I would invest in. If we're talking about billions of shekels, there's no more money to be allocated there. But I think a lot of people would agree that this is a requirement that came out.
Now, you flew both F-15s and F-16s. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the F-15 was at that time built by McDonnell Douglas, which later merged with Boeing. And the F-16 was built by General Dynamics. Now it's Lockheed Martin. So you have no interest in either company. Now Boeing is supposed to build the so-called F-47, a sixth-generation fighter, while Lockheed suggests that improving the F-35, which is, of course, the most advanced fighter in the Israeli Air Force and actually elsewhere, would be more cost-effective. If you had to choose, and these are only, of course, on the drawing table, they are not flying yet, what would your preference be?
I don't know well enough the different characteristics of those on the paper, but as we know, when things are on the paper, they don't always come out in reality as they would. Right now, I say within the next few years, the only available strategic mix that is at hand is the F-15EX that has the range and capabilities of the F-15 with some of the F-35 capabilities, radar, and intelligence, I would say, immersion systems that allow for accurate bombing at a long range without the aid of intelligence. That means that the F-15, that F-15 can gather its own information like the F-35 and control the weapon systems. It has a lot more fuel, a lot more firepower than the F-35. It doesn't have stealth and uses ECM, electronic countermeasures, instead. Those new airplanes that you've just mentioned on the paper will have to learn their traits before I make up my mind which is which. But we're not talking here about billions, about tens of billions of dollars and not shekels.
Bob,
Yes.
when I asked General Shafir about his priorities,
Yes.
where to put the last billion of shekels,
Yes.
he answered with a smile, and the inference was that it would be billions of dollars
Yes.
rather than shekels. Now, the memorandum of understanding
Yeah.
signed under the Obama administration
Yeah.
9 years ago
Yes.
is about to expire at the very end of President Trump's term, 2028.
Right.
The mood and the policy nowadays in the States is against foreign aid of any sort, including military aid to such a close ally as Israel. Do you expect that the foreign military sales program, or foreign military financing
Yes.
program, would continue? And if so, should Israel and the Israeli public expect it to be cut, if not canceled altogether?
I don't think so. You'll see in what they're calling the great, beautiful new bill, which was a budget bill, that the Pentagon and the Foreign Military Financing Program continues at full force. And
For the next year, 2026.
But and you're right that in 2026, this 10-year memorandum of understanding, which the current military aid is conducted, will expire, and it'll be starting to be renegotiated soon, I believe. I think this is my personal view, certainly not the U.S. government point of view, that it would be in Israel's interest to have a glide path to finish this aid, because I don't think it's in the long-term best interests of the U.S.-Israel relationship to have this dependency on the U.S. for such a high percentage of its military budget. And after all, Israel is a $500 billion a year economy, more than that, $515 billion a year. So as it grows, and it is growing well despite this war, Israel may not need this percentage, which is, after all, $2.4 billion a year. If you look at an economy,
No, it's more like $4 billion.
Total four, even so. And that is basically the procurement budget
Right.
of the IDF. But it comes at a cost. Israel's dependent
So
on what the U.S. I'll give you a concrete example that relates to what the general is talking about. Israel and Ambassador Michael Oren, I'm sure no relation to you, but Michael Oren used to say that, Israel used to ask for strategic heavy bombers. The U.S. always said no to that request.
We have to cut it here.
But just in short, if there is an independence over time, Israel will be able to procure what it wants without relying on the U.S.
Right. Food for thought. And we don't have to import food from the United States, at least not for thought. Ambassador Robert Silverman, General Doron Gavish, General Relik Shafir, thank you, all three of you. This has been Israel at War, an update from TV7 News Israel in Jerusalem. For the time being, and until the next update, Shalom from Jerusalem.